this getting started section, I have added a few extra videos that I want you to watch. And this is one of them. It's the Steve Jobs commencement speech from Stanford. And I have always received very good feedback from my students when they watch it. The reason why it becomes particularly important for this class is that not only is he a visionary, but he's an excellent salesperson. He is widely recognized for the auditoriums that he would fill of people who it was almost like a euphoria tech event when he was launching new products. So there's a lot to be said for learning about sales or business by watching other people that you can look at as a mentor. Because if you don't have people around you that you can look to for success, and that's one of the things that surround yourself with successful people, you can go out and look at celebrities or business people, entrepreneurs that have been very successful. So in watching this commencement speech, there's a couple of things I want you to note as you watch it. Steve Jobs has a connecting the dots story about how he was doing calligraphy and how it ultimately evolved into something that became critical in the Macintosh. I'll let you watch that journey. But what you need to understand about that is that he talks about following his gut instinct. And we don't often follow our instinct. We get in our head, we overthink things. So one of the things I want you to watch and listen is how he can see by following his instincts how it leads him on a certain path. And that applies for everybody. I've even seen it in my own life. The other thing I want you to look at is he talks about like destiny and many sort of like esoteric type of things. But getting past that, one of the things he talks about is being an adopted child, that if the lawyer family hadn't abandoned him and not wanted him as a baby, he wouldn't have been placed where he was placed, where his mother was a homemaker and his father was an electrician. What he doesn't say in this story, but if you follow it to its logical conclusion, is how much influence his dad must have had in creating a computer. Because what goes into a computer except for electronics? So while he doesn't talk about it, I'm sure that his dad heavily influenced him since they started the Apple company in his dad's garage. So if he hadn't been adopted by the family that he was adopted to, he might not have ever had an interest in electronics or computers. One of the other things I want you to note is that while he said that he quit college, I don't want you to think that's just a license to say, okay, I'm going to quit college. What he did was to continue to take the classes, but audit them. And that means that he is still went to the classes. He just didn't get credit for them. So you hear him about the journey and the struggles that he had. And that's the other takeaway, is that sometimes when you want certain types of careers, or you think that you want to, make something, the money does follow, but it takes a lot of hard work and dedication. And that's why he was known as being a taskmaster CEO. People found him to be abrasive sometimes. He wasn't around for his family all the time. And that's what you get very typically with visionaries. They love what they do so much that it becomes all-encompassing. And Steve Jobs was one of those people. The other thing that Steve Jobs was known for is getting people to work for him when he couldn't pay them. So what people did was, he's very compelling. And hey, I want to work for you, but you can't pay me. What he did instead was to give them stock options. And if you really listen to somebody and you really buy in and believe what they say, stock options or sweat equity is a really good way for you to be able to be compensated differently. And all of those people that took no pay and stock option retired multimillionaires. So for their belief in him, they were handsomely rewarded. Even those that want to complain now for media attention that he was a taskmaster, I would expect nothing less of somebody who wants perfection and is so just in awe of the idea of building something that consumers want. One of the other things that is, I think, very interesting as you watch this is that he said that when he was working for Apple, that he got fired from his own company. And he asked the question, how can you get fired from your own company? I usually, when I'm teaching face to face, I will stop the video and I will say he got fired from his company because he went public. So one of the things that you'll take away is that, yes, you can make a lot of money by doing an IPO and going public with your company. But the risk is that if you don't build the right board and or the dynamics on the board changes, you can be fired from your own company. But one of the things, the other significant things that he goes through, that he explains, that often gets glossed over, is that he went through a depression after being fired. But then he had this resurgence where he started to really love what it was that he did when he first started, the challenge of it, the struggle of doing something new. When he turned that around, he ended up getting hired back at Apple because he created a product that would work with Apple. The other thing to know about Steve Jobs is that because of his industry connections and being connected with other people, he was also connected with George Lucas. And George Lucas is one of my other sort of mentor marketing gurus that I really admire what he's done. But I also see how he's really changed things, not necessarily in a positive way, but also in positive ways. So I'll talk about him a little bit later. But one of the things that he did is that George created Industrial Light and Magic. And the software program that allowed him to do that technology, Steve Jobs bought it or leased it from him, whatever, and created Pixar with it. So he was able to see from what George was doing for his Star Wars movies, had the vision to be able to see how that could make cartoons. And ultimately that was sold to Disney for a lot of money. And so did George Lucas, sold his company to Disney. So there's a lot of takeaways, and I have watched this probably, I want to say, well over 100 times. And often I would encourage you to look back at it, because there's often I'll watch it and hear something differently. And that, just so you know, is my style of learning, is that because we live in a very distracted world, I will watch something over and over and over again, because I know that when I get stuck on something I'm thinking about, when I'm watching it, I'm missing information. So, and also there may be something that happened in my life that I go back and I listen to it. I'm like, okay, wow, that's much more impactful because of what just happened. So I hope that this is a video that you turn to in many ways for inspiration, and for guidance as you go through the corporate world in your career. Is that there's a lot to be learned from Steve Jobs, and not just how he built his company, but also his sales ability. So please watch it, and we'll end up having conversations with you in our one-on-ones, where I'll ask you some questions about it, hopefully, that you can come up with something that you learned, that you took away from this video, because I find it very inspiring. So enjoy.